Welcome to OneCare's Ambulatory Electronic Health Record AEHR course for View Only. The following lessons are designed to teach you many of the components of the AEHR View Only class, including navigating of the daily schedule screen, searching for a patient, accessing the patient profile, how to create and send a task, and viewing the clinical desktop. In this first lesson of the View Only course, you will learn about the daily schedule screen, how to search for a patient, and the patient profile. Lesson activities include watching a demonstration, then building your skills in a practice scenario. When ready to begin, click Continue. To access the application, you must double-click on the AEHR icon located on the desktop. The Citrix application window displays indicating the program is loading. After the program has loaded, the login screen displays. At this point, the login can be entered into the Login ID field. In this example, the login ID of CHI-STU50 is entered. After entering the login ID, the Tab key is used to move into the password field. Next, the password is entered into the password field. In this example, a password of password01 is entered. When entering in passwords, all characters are hidden. The password field is case sensitive and must be entered using the correct upper and lower case letters. To begin a new session, the New Session button is selected. Another option is Last Session. This option is useful when AEHR times out. AEHR contains a security feature that logs you off the system after 30 minutes of inactivity. If this occurs and you log back into AEHR, select Last Session to be taken back to the patient you previously assessed. In this example, New Session is selected. AEHR is a series of modules accessed within a role-based workplace. This system utilizes point-and-click navigation. Let's begin navigating through the daily schedule. The role definition is the user's role within the organization according to security privileges. In this example, the role is View Only. The vertical toolbar is role-dependent and lists a menu of options corresponding to specific functional areas within AEHR. To display a full screen, you can click Hide Vertical Toolbar or VTB at any time. To retrieve the vertical toolbar, click Show VTB. The horizontal toolbar displays the tabs or functional areas available from the options selected on the vertical toolbar. In this case, the selection on the vertical toolbar is Chart, so the horizontal toolbar displays tabs related to the chart. The clinical toolbar provides users access to a patient's chart information from any screen within AEHR. It displays as a floating toolbar while on the Daily tab. When other screens are accessed within AEHR, the clinical toolbar becomes docked within the screen. The clinical toolbar will be discussed in greater detail once a patient has been selected and its buttons are active. Above the horizontal toolbar are the buttons displayed on the AEHR tool place. The first button is the Tools button. The Tools button displays a drop-down menu that includes a Settings option which is used to change the password and a Show Hide Clinical Toolbar option, which is used to toggle the floating clinical toolbar on and off. The Help button is available within any AEHR screen. On the Help screen, a table of contents displays on the left side of the screen, which provides help on different topics within AEHR. You can also use the Search feature to search for help using keywords or phrases. When you are finished with the Help screen, the Close button is used to close Help and return to the previous AEHR screen. We have returned to the daily schedule. In addition to the Help feature, AEHR has an iLearn option. iLearn can be accessed from the horizontal toolbar, and it contains short videos that demonstrate several different functions within AEHR. Important: the videos within iLearn are created by AEHR and not specific to CHI. They may contain information or processes that are not currently used by CHI. Moving back to the Tool Place options, let's discuss the Lock option. To ensure patient confidentiality, each session should be locked whenever you step away from the workstation. Locking a session also enables multiple sessions to be used on the same computer. To lock the session from any screen, click the Lock button. the session locked window displays. To unlock the session, simply enter the password to be taken back to the screen you were on when the session was locked. Keep in mind that AEHR contains a security feature that logs you off the system after 30 minutes of inactivity. Even if you have locked the session, the timeout feature will log you off after 30 minutes. Our password is password01, so we'll enter that in the password field. Clicking the Resume button logs us back into AEHR. When finished working in AEHR, it is best practice to use the Log Off button in the upper right side of the screen. The log off process will be demonstrated at the end of this lesson. Now let's explore how to search and select a patient. To search for a patient, you would click the drop-down arrow to the right of the Select Patient. Then select Search from the drop-down menu. The Select Patient screen displays. The patient's last name is entered into the patient field. In this example, a search is entered for Baxter. The entire last name has been entered, but patient searches may be done using partial names. For example, BAX for Baxter. Searches can also be done using both last and first names and the year of birth by separating each item with a comma. For example, to search for Julie Johnson, born in 1953, you would enter JOH, JUL, 1953. This type of search is helpful when searching for common names. When finished typing the patient's name, click the Search button. A list of patients displays. The number of patients listed depends on the search information entered. If no patients are listed or you receive a long list of patients, check the search information entered as it may be incorrect or it may need to be altered. To alter the search, simply retype the information in the patient field and click the Search button. To select a patient, click on the name in the list. When the desired patient is highlighted, click OK. The patient's information displays in the patient banner and now contains demographic information pertaining to the selected patient. The patient banner will be explained in greater detail in another lesson. Let's learn a little more about the clinical toolbar. Roll your mouse over each icon on the clinical toolbar to see a description of the icon. When ready to proceed, click Continue. Moving on, a schedule of appointments may be viewed for one provider or multiple providers. The daily schedule displays information about patient appointments scheduled for that day or for the provider that is logged on. In our example, we are logged into AEHR as clinical staff and need to search for a provider. To begin this process, we need to click the All button to the right of the provider field to search for a provider. From the search screen, we'll type in the last name of the provider. In this example, let's search for Ames as the provider. After entering the provider's name, the Go button is used to obtain a list of providers that match the search. Just as with patient searches, you can type in as little or as much information as you want. The key is to type in as little information as needed, but enough to obtain the results without sifting through a long list. Here we see from the search results, Allison Ames is found. In our situation, only one provider was found, so the name is highlighted. If multiple providers were listed, it would be necessary to highlight the provider we wanted. After the correct provider is highlighted, the OK button is used to return to the prior screen. The provider's name now appears in the provider field. However, in this example, the provider does not have any patients scheduled for today's date, May 30th, 2014. When you log into AEHR, you are automatically taken to the current date. There are a number of ways to move from date to date to see the daily schedule for a specific date. One way is by using the calendar icon to the right of the date field. The Select a Date screen displays. For this example, we'll use February 10th of 2011 to display the schedule for this provider. To begin, we must click the drop-down next to the year and change it to 2011. 2011 is selected from the drop-down list. Next, the month is changed to February by clicking on the drop-down arrow next to the month field. February is selected from the drop-down list. The final step is to select the day for the schedule you want to view. You could select the day from the drop-down option at the top of the screen, but in this case, we'll select the 10th from the February calendar that displays in the middle of the screen. After the day is selected, the OK button is used to return to the prior screen. Notice that the date field now displays February 10, 2011, and the provider's schedule now displays on the daily schedule screen. Other options to move from date to date include using the buttons or icons to the right of the date field. They include the Days of the Week button to move to the daily schedule for days within the same week, the Go to Today icon to display the daily schedule for the current day, the Previous Week icon to display the daily schedule for the same day of the previous week, or the Next Week icon to display the daily schedule for the same day of the next week. Continuing with navigation of the daily schedule screen, let's take a closer look at some of the other information and buttons that display on this screen. The AM, PM, and total fields indicate the number of morning, afternoon, and total appointments for that day. The last updated field displays the last date and time the data on the daily schedule was refreshed. To the right of the last updated field, a refresh icon can be used to refresh the data and display the most current schedule information. AEHR automatically refreshes every 5 minutes. The personalized link towards the upper right side of the screen is used to personalize the providers that automatically display on the daily schedule when we are looking at one schedule, or on the Provider Schedules tab where we can look at up to 4 different schedules. Let's click on the personalized link and review how to set providers. The personalized window displays. The left side of the window is used to set the default provider on the Daily Schedule tab. The right side of the window is used to set the default providers on the Provider Schedules tab. Let's set the default provider for the daily schedule to Allison Ames. The first step to set the provider is to click the drop-down arrow to the right of the default provider field. Now we will select Allison Ames from the list of values. Note, if our provider was not listed in the drop-down list, we would select the All button and perform a search for the provider. We will leave the next 3 fields as they have defaulted. Please note, the automatic refresh time should not be set to less than 5 minutes, as this could cause system slowness. If we wanted to see multiple provider schedules on the Daily Schedule tab, we can click the New button and search for and add each provider we want to view. If we wanted to see up to 4 provider schedules on the Provider Schedules tab, we would follow the same steps we just completed for each of the 4 default provider fields. In this example, these fields will be completed for you. Now with our default set, let's click the OK button to return to the daily schedule. We are now back on the daily schedule. With our default set, each time we log in, Allison Ames will automatically populate the provider field. We will set defaults for the Provider Schedules tab as well. Let's click on the Provider Schedules tab on the horizontal toolbar to review our defaults. We can now see the 4 default provider schedules on the same screen. Notice Allison is the only provider who has a schedule for the day selected. Now that we have reviewed this default view, let's click the Daily tab to return to the daily schedule. We are back on the daily schedule. Next, we will select a patient from the daily schedule. To select a patient, single-click anywhere on the line of the desired patient. The patient's information now displays in the patient banner. To return to the previous patient, the drop-down arrow to the right of Select Patient is used. To return to David Baxter's chart, we'll click on his name in the list. Notice the original patient, David Baxter, is now in context within the patient banner. Now let's review the patient profile. From the daily schedule screen, our patient has already been selected and appears within the patient banner. To access the patient profile section, we'll click the information icon in the patient banner. From the patient profile, you can verify existing information as well as add or remove information as needed. One note prior to continuing this lesson. In the Clinical Information section, the Medication History Consent field may or may not be defaulted to Granted. Please check with your clinic manager to determine the process for documenting the Medication History Consent field in your region. Let's begin navigating through the patient profile by first discussing FYIs and chart alerts. FYI information is the equivalent of a memo and not part of the patient's medical record. The FYI feature is used to document important non-clinical information. Users can create an FYI that appears on the patient banner when the patient is in context. It's important to note that when adding FYI information, you must add your CHI AU number and the date the FYI was entered. Users can create chart alerts that appear in red on the clinical toolbar when a patient is in context in the patient banner. Chart alerts are visible by any user who has security to view the patient's clinical record. Chart alerts are the equivalent of a red underlined note on the front of a paper chart and contain clinically relevant information. Now let's look at how to navigate through the patient profile using the navigation hyperlinks. Navigation hyperlinks displayed in bold indicate that this is a section currently displayed at the top. To navigate to a different section of the patient profile, click on the hyperlink of the corresponding section. For example, to navigate to the Patient Care Team section to see a list of members for this patient, we would click on the Patient Care Team link. The Patient Care Team now displays at the top of the section. We can see there are no members within this patient's patient care team. We have completed our navigation of the patient profile, so let's return to the daily schedule by clicking on the Cancel button. We are now back on the daily schedule screen. After navigating through the patient profile, you should have a solid understanding as to why the FYI icon appears yellow within the patient banner and why the chart alerts appear in red on the clinical toolbar. If the patient were to have more chart alerts than what will fit on the clinical toolbar, an additional information icon appears at the end of the toolbar. To view the additional chart alerts, left-click on the icon. The additional chart alerts now display. When finished working in AEHR, use the Log Off button in the upper right side of the screen to log off the system. An End Session message displays. OK is selected to continue the log off process. Logging off takes you back to the AEHR login screen. The X in the top right corner of the screen is used to exit the application. Let's begin this lesson on the daily schedule screen. Our patient, David Bauman, has already been brought into context within the patient banner. Notice in this example, we have removed the FYI and chart alerts from the previous lesson. To access the patient's clinical desktop, select the Clinical Desktop tab from the horizontal toolbar. The Clinical Desktop displays. From here, you can quickly review a patient's condition prior to an appointment by viewing an overview of current patient information, including active problems, medications, allergies, and encounters. The staff has access to all areas of a patient's record from the Clinical Desktop, which is comprised of the following elements: the Clinical Desktop view, the Clinical Toolbar, and components. For the purpose of this demonstration, let's toggle the Clinical Desktop from a tiled component view to a full screen component view. To do this, we'll select the Tile Full Screen icon. Now let's proceed to navigate through the Clinical Desktop components and illustrate what's located within each tab. First, the Problems tab displays a list of patients' problems organized by the default view, which in this example is active problems. To view other problems, the drop-down arrow next to the active problems is selected. This drop-down list contains different views, enabling you to focus on a specific problem type, such as past medical history or family history. In this example, let's select All so that all the patient's problem history will be displayed. From this view, we can see all of the patient's problem history, ranging from past medical history to social history. Note the asterisk next to current smoker. A problem with an asterisk to the left of the name indicates the presence of an annotation. An annotation is the entry of a critical or explanatory comment related to the selected item. To view the annotation, double-click on the item to display the details. From the Problem Viewer window, we can see the annotation for this item. In this example, it indicates that the patient smokes 1 pack a day. When finished viewing the annotation, the X in the upper right corner is used to exit the window. Continuing on, let's now look at the Vitals tab. The Vitals tab allows quick and convenient access to view past vitals for a selected patient. Note, if a value is entered outside of the normal parameters, a red beaker is displayed next to the value, indicating the value is abnormal. Now let's proceed to the HMP tab. The HMP tab, or Health Management Plan, provides a tool to monitor periodic events related to the patient's health maintenance and disease management. Physicians are also able to view health management alerts from this section. These alerts are visual indicators that a patient has an orderable item, such as medication or immunization, with a status of either overdue or near due. An important point to keep in mind is that the H&P component consists of only the following 3 items: orders or results linked to a problem, medications linked to a problem, and order reminders. From the drop-down menu of the H&P component, you can select the desired view. To learn more about each view from this drop-down, roll your mouse over each item to learn of its description. When ready to proceed, click Continue. The next tab is Flowsheets. Flowsheets are a convenient way to view clinical data recorded over time for a selected patient. Flowsheets are viewed as either a spreadsheet or a graph and are used for comparison and trend analysis. To graph a flowsheet, you would select the appropriate checkbox from within the graph column. Note, in this example, we're viewing the diabetes flowsheet for our patient. You can view other flowsheets such as the Coumadin flowsheet by selecting them from the drop-down. In addition, each specialty will have a different set of flowsheets. Now let's proceed to the Chart Viewer tab. Chart Viewer allows you to view any clinical documentation from the patient chart, including notes, referrals, test results, scanned images, and consent forms. Chart items can be searched, grouped, and filtered by various criteria in order to find specific documents quickly and easily. In this example, the default Chart Viewer view is all by section by subsection. The drop-down arrow is used to change the view. From the drop-down, you can select other views such as all by problem and all notes. Quick Filter is another option when you wish to only view certain documents from a patient's record, such as office notes for a specific provider. The Quick Filter icon is used to access the Quick Filter in order to filter a list of desired records. A search section displays with a list of filtering options. In this section, you would use the drop-down arrows to select one or more categories to narrow the list of chart items. Moving on, let's now select the Encounter tab. The Encounter tab shows any associated encounters for the patient. Next, let's move on to the Meds tab. The Medications tab is used to view a list of medications for the selected patient. In the Medications tab, you can view current medication and past medication. Past medication includes medications completed or those that have been discontinued and/or replaced. The drop-down arrow is used to change the view of the medication list that is being displayed. In this example, let's select the All Meds option to view both current and past medications for this patient. The Meds tab now displays a list of the patient's current and past medications. Now let's continue to the Allergies tab. The Allergies tab enables you to quickly review and manage the selected patient's allergies. Both medication and non-medication allergies are viewed and managed from here. Note, if no allergies exist for the selected patient, the system displays No Known Allergies in the Allergies component. Now let's proceed to the Orders tab. The Orders tab allows you to view all orders for the patient. Similar to the Meds tab, selecting the drop-down arrow will allow you to select different views. From the drop-down, you can select to view current, past, or all orders. Finally, let's select the Patient Worklist tab. The Patient Worklist component displays a list of order or result-related items for a specific patient. It quickly and conveniently displays these results and provides an organized and efficient way to authorize and verify them. From here, the provider has access to the patient's complete chart at the same time they are reviewing, authorizing, or verifying orders. Next, let's review the daily schedule by clicking on the Daily tab in the horizontal toolbar. We are now back on the Daily Schedule screen. Next, let's send a task to another recipient about this same patient. To begin, select the New Task button. The Task Detail window displays. Since this task is about our patient, David Bauman, let's first verify that the concerning patient radio button is selected. Now let's select the appropriate radio button in the Assign To area. Now we'll select the username from the Assign To drop-down arrow. In this example, let's send this task to the clinic's front desk receptionist, Jessie Hoyt. If the user was not located from within the drop-down options, you would select the All button and search for the appropriate recipient. Now from the Task drop-down arrow, select the desired task type. From the drop-down selections, you would choose your task type. In this example, let's select Callback since our patient is inquiring about the time of his next appointment. Note, tasking is only to be used for patient-related messages and not to be used for personal messages between staff when not patient-related. Then select the desired priority for this task in the Priority field by clicking the drop-down arrow. From the drop-down selections, the 3 priority levels are ASAP, or as soon as possible, Routine, and Urgent. Note, per CHI policy, tasks become overdue after the time frame is reached for the priority level. An ASAP priority level time frame is 48 hours, Routine is 7 days, and Urgent is 6 hours. In this example, we'll select the priority level of Urgent. Notice by selecting an urgent task, the overdue field replicates the CHI policy and the task becomes overdue in 6 hours from the time it is activated. Now let's enter the desired text in the comment field for the person receiving this task. In this example, we'll type the comment "Call patient back regarding appointment date and time." We've moved to the bottom of the task window. If applicable, select the desired Create Notify Task When checkbox for this task. In this example, that's not needed, so let's click OK to activate this task. The task has now been sent to the recipient.